So this last section crosstalk will be moderated by Mr. Errol van der Werdt, Director and CEO from Textile Museum Tilburg. Errol is also currently the General Director and CEO of the MoMA Heritage Foundation. He is also a member of CHED's advisory panel and one of the speakers in TECHSTYLE Series from last year. We have been receiving invaluable advice from Errol and is very excited to have him back this year as the moderator of our first day crosstalk. I will now pass the time to Errol.
Thank you very much, everybody. You're really diehards here, still being here. The most passionate textile lovers, and we will finalize and try to keep you awake with good questions and to remember what we have been discussing this afternoon. To my opinion, it was really inspiring. I heard so many different perspectives. I saw so many different opinions, and in a way, there was a sort of red thread through all the stories. And I hope you will leave home after this really inspired and really looking forward to come back to see what this museum is going to do in the near future and create another new community here in Asia, connecting with the rest of the world. In a way, it was all going about how to deal with the textile legacy now and in the future. We had some questions about creating new platforms to deal with the legacy. We talked about rejuvenation or preservation. And we also talked about the idea if innovation and craftsmanship could be friends together. I would say, is it still a question after some perfect examples here this afternoon? And especially the last two lectures were really inspiring me in saying completely yes on this item. We started with a beautiful keynote speaker, and she took us to some family stories. And for me, they were a really fascinating example for a sort of personal cultural exchange. The family story, which was talking about transferring knowledge on textiles from a mother to daughter, and I think it's where it starts all. It starts really close in our houses and spreads into the world. I was really triggered by her pictures showing us ordinary people wearing fantastic fashion clothes. That was inspiring to see for me. We had Sharon also here, and Sharon was asking the question, why is it so difficult to incorporate these crafty designs into the fashion world? It's a good question, I think. And she was also telling these family stories again, how to transfer this legacy from generation to generation. What she also said was that legacy needs to be revisited. The urbanization is going fast, and it's a real threat to our textiles legacy. So we have a job to do in this field. And also this museum has a job to do in this field. Nguyen, I hope I pronounced that in a good way, she was dealing with this problem by organizing really different workshops about embroidery, about dyeing, and I think that's also an important a way to transfer knowledge and expertise in the field of textile legacies. Janice, what can I say more? You gave an excellent summary of all the items in the book, and I only can add to that just by that book. So then we went to the second session, and in that second session we started with, it's a really difficult name, Chantosona Intavo. Is that correct? Okay, perfect, thank you. And you were dealing with another issue, and it triggered me also. You said that sometimes it's really challenging because of the brightness of the color that you use chemical dyes. And yes, we have to realize that. How can we deal with issues like that? Because of course we prefer using the natural dyes. And it has always been doing these things like that in past times. Fumi Kobayashi, she was telling the story about Calicot. I did not realize that so well that term of Calicot, it's a name which has been used for so many centuries already. And it's, to be honest, it's the first time that I really understand where it came from and how it worked and how it developed. She also talked about the Kadi not being just a cloth, but also a thought. And she included the words of Gandhi in this story. And you can see how powerful textiles can be if you use that in a good way. Then we had, in the third session, we had that amazing story of Huzu Masataka, and a company which was working so long and always kept that quality really high in their company and never compromised in this thing, and still dealt with the question of innovation by including new technology and still succeeding in keeping that quality as high as it always has been. It was a fascinating story. And of course, Gabriella, you told us the story about Vlisco, and that's an amazing story, of course, but to be honest, even more amazing for me was the Vlisco & Co. story. Why? Because I never heard about a company doing field work in Africa and asking new generations, what do you need? It's not a market who is giving you a certain product and you just use it or not. No, you are asking new generations, creating new narratives, and I think that's impressive. You are really in dialogue with the brand. And to my opinion, you will succeed in giving a new life and inspiration to Vlisco. All, thank you very much for the inspirational thought. And now about the connection with the public here. I think it's really important that you are included in this discussion also. We selected a couple of questions, and I hope we can have a sort of debate here all together. I start walking to the thing here. I just take one. I just start here. To Fumi. The question is, what is the most difficult challenge in your business? Can you give a comment on that?
Yes, so to answer that question, maybe one is, of course, quality, because there are multiple standards in India, and my market majority is Japan, and so quite high standard. So it's very difficult to matching that point. And so repeating the process, so we are going to reach. So that's one. But so other than that, so there's no big difficulties. Like maybe you expect some difficulties to dealing with Indians as Japanese, but it's really not, because so I have a double standard. When I'm in India, I'm a very Indian mindset. I throw all the Japanese standard measurement, and so I'm floating, like, so my mind is all floating always, and I try to be very zero base. That's very important to do something and to be a creative.
Thank you. Somebody asked the question, is this an answer on your question? I don't know, of course, who asked the question. If you think it has been answered, it's okay. But then I go to you for another time, because there's another question for you. And that's how you persuade the Indian artisans to collaborate with you.
Again,
How do you
so
do this?
Actually, I don't have much experience to persuade a person. And artisans are always very keen to work. They are very craft person's mindset. And yeah, in a sense, I'm also doing the dialogues always. And so it's a mutual thing. It's a collaboration. So it's never been done by pushing mode. So nothing to persuade. That's my answer. Yes.
Thank you. I switch to Gabriella. A question for you. What's the main challenge to innovate with craftsmanship? Can you comment on that?
When we talk about product, I think for us the main challenge is the distance, and that Flisco has behaved in a way that we don't want to repeat. Like I am the head of Flisco & Co, so I don't want to come to West Africa saying, I think you like this, and you should buy it. And for that, I need to be in Africa a lot. And I was recently in an open weekend in INSEAD, this famous school in France, with many CEOs, and everybody agreed that Africa is the most difficult continent to work with. So there are many, many challenges while working with Africa, but we have to. I mean, we have to pay attention to the continent, and it's such a rich culture. It just has, I heard recently from an African person saying Africa just got bad PR because it's beautiful, and we just victims of corruption in journalism. We just hear the wrong stories, but we want to begin telling the right stories about Africa.
And it needs that you go with an open mind to it. Do you still have some expectations, or are you going into really blanco?
No,
how do you work with that?
Well, luckily, very fast I created a network, and for me, it's friends. So when I land now in Lagos, I have friends that I WhatsApp immediately to, and I say, yeah, I'm in Lagos. Where do we go? Or and it is so, you cannot predict, to be honest, when you're in Lagos what will happen. You think it will take you an hour to get to your hotel, and you're 5 hours in the car. So you have to be open, and you have to be flexible, and it is crazy because I'm Mexican and I feel home in Mexico, home in the Netherlands, but recently I really land in West Africa and I feel also home. So
maybe it's also necessary to feel at home to come into connection with people.
And people also really appreciate having a face of Flisco & Co, and seeing you on the ground so often. For them, they know how difficult it might be for foreigners to be there. So once they see you every 2 months, they're like, wow, you're all local, right? So yeah, it's really appreciated.
And if you start making new friends, is it that people consider you as the westernized person who is coming for business, or is there a sort of suspicion, so what's she trying to achieve or not?
In that sense, I have to confess, I think I'm very lucky, and Flisco is very lucky to have me, because I'm not European.
That's true.
So
That's
I have been involved in really delicate discussions about guilt and racism, and I have the guilt doesn't pop up immediately in me because I'm not European, and I think I don't have that. I don't carry that baggage with me. I'm Mexican.
True.
I was a colony as well.
Yeah.
So
You have to explain that also. If you come there, you say, "I'm from Mexico."
they just don't identify me as a European person, and that helps. Yeah.
Can you maybe talk about how you could sort of convince the heads of, like all their 100
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting too. Yeah, but could be my next question. Are you free to deal with these issues? How much space do you have from your company to do it in the way you do it? Because I could imagine that they expect something from you. Okay, you have to do business after so many times.
Have to profit from it, yeah. As I said in my presentation, it began as a movement, and when I meant movement, I really meant, like, it was really tough. We had to impose and to do things, and that's why I began by myself, because it was so new that I just did it. I just said, okay, you don't support me now, I'll just do it and show you the results. And we have local team that is also used to a certain traditional way of working, but luckily, 3 years ago, we got a new CEO, David Suddens. He is famous for being a turnover expertise, so he rescued Dr. Martens.
Yep.
And he really has supported the creative team, and he's promoting Flisco & Co. So without him, I think I wouldn't have managed. But it's always when I'm on the ground in West Africa and it's tough, I always say, we also have internal discussions about the relevancy of Flisco & Co. And it's hard, but I think I'm really positive, and this year our local teams understood, and we begin working as a team. Yeah.
Sounds good, amazing. Thank you. I do have a question for Husu. Can you tell us about the weavers that work with you?
One more, please.
Yeah, can you tell us about the weavers you work with in your company? You also have weavers. You explained that on your video that they were working there. What kind of people are they?
Okay, so our company have 10 craftsmen now.
Yeah.
So, but no, our textile have 20 process, and each process each one master craftsman do that. So woven process is a final process, 20th process, and very separate. And we never include the whole process in our company. We have 10 craftsmen, but we covered in this Nishijin district about 3 kilo square meter. For example, one family business is dyeing thread. That's a family business. And another craftsman is there's one traditional material we call haku. This is a paper with put on the silver. One family business just only put on the paper, put on the silver and the gold. The one family business. And another family business we call the cutters. They just cut it by machine, by hand. This material developed about 300 years ago. Before they do the Japanese small sword with by hand. So very separate. So that's a small ecosystem where the Nishijin area maybe more than 200 weavers. And but another process, prepare thread, is a family business. Everything is separate. The focus to the very detail. So this is what it says. So now our next challenge, how to make a new ecosystem in our so Nishijin industry. Not only our companies, so we have to think about for the ecosystems. This is a new challenge.
Yeah,
for the future.
it triggers me a bit because we are dealing in the Textile Lab in the Netherlands with the same problem. We still have these old craftsmen, and they are getting into retirement, and it's a really big challenge to find really good people with a lot of experience. The thing we are dealing with that now is to connect younger people who is really passionate about a certain technique, to combine them and to let them work together for a couple of years, and hopefully they will stay and don't go to the industry or who is paying more than we can pay. So, but it is a real challenge. So I was really thinking on how are you dealing with that?
Yeah, actually, so 10 or years ago, so we recruiting for the craftsmen, so very difficult to recruiting.
Yeah.
But now, so if we start the recruiting, the one post about 10 or 20 people is coming.
Okay.
That's very interesting. And their background is after graduate, the art schools, background is fashion, engineering.
Okay.
For them, it's, the craft is not so conservative. For them,
Okay.
it's craftsmanship equal very innovative, creative things. So that's a little bit changed the situation
Okay.
in our company. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, that's
Yeah,
right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Nope. Yes, please.
Yes. The another company, the more little bit conservative, they focus just on the domestic kimono market.
Okay.
And next, our challenge is how to make our competitors, because we need to keep maintain the ecosystems. That's a new challenge for these 3 or 5 years.
Okay. Yeah, maybe there's a difference between Asia and Europe. Maybe Janice can comment on that also because you're working on university. What I see, for instance, in the Netherlands is that a lot of people from academies, they are taught in a more conceptual way. So they're not really learning anymore about the technique of the craft and so on. So it's really hard to get these people in your company. What's your experience on that, Janice?
In the sciences or computing, and programmers are particularly interested in materiality and the crafts. And it's to do with several things, is that even with technological platforms and systems, and you can look at architecture in Nottingham Contemporary, for example, the only way they could actually construct the external facade was to get a lace maker to produce lace to scale up. They couldn't do it in any other way. And then they could work with new platforms to provide the kind of infrastructure that would complete the project. And I think you can reiterate that through that idea of a kind of digital craft, if you like. And so in order for some of those scientists, DNA is another example, or the mobile strip with researchers who go back to thinking about how can I make this in order to understand how to create it technologically. I think the other thing that is really interesting, because you haven't got the snobbery in those communities which divide art and craft. I mean, that's just an old, worn-out debate. So they're much more open to saying an engineer's tackle is what I call it, an engineer's tackle. How does this work? Will it work? And what do I need to do to find out how it works? It's a very different kind of procedure or process, if you like. And I think it also means that some of the scientists I know are the best knitters because of the binary code. You said that yourself. You know, the zeros and ones. You start with that, it's mathematical formula, off they go, and then they get really into knitting. And it's just a kind of another process. So I'm rather hopeful that interdisciplinary teams, which you seem to describe that you have, allows that cross-fertilization to take place. My frustration in institutions, to be boring about it, is to break down departmental barriers. So I created digital studios where you had right across the board, and then other issues emerged. But anyway, for 3 years, you had people working side by side. And that connectivity, that kind of teamwork, that cross-disciplinary work really generated new ideas, new thinking, new ways of working. That's the social. So my frustration is often with the institutions, educationally, I mean. Just because they're very narrow, they want to think departmentally all the time. And that's to do with budgets as much as anything else. Sorry, that was long-winded.
No, but I think you're triggering me because we deal with the same problem. And what we experience is that working with interdisciplinary teams are the best guarantee for innovation. If you put an ICT person, a technical guy, somebody who's dealing with the machine, a curator, and some other people, a yarn expert, together, beautiful things come out. You just should allow them to experimentate, to do investigation, without a clear goal. People have to find new ways. And for a company, mostly, it's really hard to give not a clear goal. But if you do so, it can be really rewarding. It's my experience, at least in our place. I have another question for you. And that triggers me also because also the Textile Museum is dealing with that problem. Do you work with machine manufacturers to develop new looms?
Yes.
You do?
Not me.
Yeah.
But so our just 10 years ago, so we started to the overseas challenge. But so normally our Jagger machine is narrow, 32 or 38 centimeter wide, and we started to the team in our craftsmen, and we have an ecosystem of the Nishijin. There is a very specialist of the weaving machines. So unfortunately, they are very old, so 80 years old, so not so young people. But we make a team, about 5 or 6 teams. And but finally we took 1 year, but we get success for the new machine. And we started to just one machine for the overseas. And every day we add one machine. Now we have 6 machines in our studio.
Oh, that's fantastic. We also deal with the manufacturers. And I remember one story that the director of a famous Swiss machine builder came to us and he said to us, "You are doing things with my machines which are not allowed." And then we said to him, "Please, let's build together a new machine and you will be surprised." So in the short term, we will go to Switzerland and to talk about this. And I offered him, let me be a place to experiment and probably you will build new machines in future. Just give me that machine because we don't have the money for that, of course. But and it's interesting to see if you can convince machine builders that there will also be a future for them if they open their factories and are able to adapt. Because I think that's an important thing. Only by adapting you can innovate. And I strongly believe in that. But the world is not always ready for that. You have to talk a lot about that. Thank you. I have a question for Shantason. It's a nice question, I think. Have you ever thought teaching weaving to men? To male Yeah, because you were talking a lot about, and I think that's a really good thing, empowering women. It's fantastic, but did you talk to men about, oh, do you want to learn weaving or?
I want to learn, but I think I'm not good to do. It's better that I weave with my mouth. So I will tell everybody to do this, to do this. They will do for me. In the center, my staff, we empower them. They come when they are very young, but they can do it very good already.
Okay.
So they come to learn how to dye with the natural dye, but unfortunately, they don't want to make them hands dirty. Now they don't want to dye. They know to do, but they don't want to do. So I have to hire a man, 2 men, to dye for them.
Two young men probably
Yes, young men
can
to dye.
start again. Yeah.
They only want to weave. They only want to weave. They are very good. And after they work with us for some years, they will go to their own village and make their own company. It's a good idea for them. They come to learn from us, and after that, they be independent. Now, for me, I want to try to weave too, but now many visitors, like from Europe, America, come to do experience in our center. Some come to study for 1 year, 6 months, and then they go to Africa, they go to another country to teach. So, as I said that in Laos, we don't have school of textile. I want to upgrade my center to be a school in the future. I'm not so young. I don't think that very far future. I want to do it in very near future to upgrade it to a school.
I can imagine, but we have a saying in the Netherlands, probably also somewhere else, that if there's one sheep over the bridge, more will follow. So if you start with these young 2 people, more will follow for sure in future. So there's still hope in this thing.
Still hope, yes.
I have a question for Sharon. Sharon, has the urbanization of China endangered the continuation of crafts? Has.
Yeah, definitely. I think with the amount of constructions and development in big and small cities and towns and little provinces now, it's very obvious that craftsmen or general people who have been living in villages have access to bigger industrial goods and different ways of living, mobile phones, etc. So there is a lot more connection to the outside, and they want to change their lifestyle. So this is a generational concern, but also older people are seeing that there is new future for the next generation. They don't encourage craft work anymore. So I think that's part of the conversation, and it's happening obviously in Laos as well. The BRI, everyone has been hearing, the Belt and Road Initiative, is building things everywhere, and that is a very tangible case in seeing how big constructions are joining up places that have never been joined up before. Isolated places are allowing people to change their lifestyle in, overnight. So in a way, it's endangering crafts that's already showing this interest. But what I'm concerned more is actually breaking up families and the social structures.
But maybe as a result of that, do you also see young people returning back, migrating back to the village to continue the crafts? Do you see some movements in that field?
Within China, yeah, there are a few. It's not the majority, obviously, but because of the extreme development that the country has been going through, I think a lot of youth are seeking new ways to create their sustainable lifestyle in what they see as, you know, an alternative future. So there are people who move back to villages to start natural dye initiatives. There are some weaving and embroidery workshops as well, but definitely dyeing, natural dyeing is a bit quicker, and seeing the results a bit quicker and easier to be commercialized afterwards as a product.
And what about the local communities, also the local governments? Are they encouraging these developments in a way that they see it's important for a community, it's important for having some families together and to getting some new, maybe business also? Do they encourage it, or don't they see that?
I sense that the governments are promoting heritage crafts as a good value to keep. But it's quite hard to make such initiative practical and kind of persuade people to dedicate their lives and change their career to invest in something unless there is a market demand. So yeah, I think there are initiatives. They're relatively short terms from my perspective in the villages. There are also good initiatives in cities, you know, started by county funds and government, and they do bigger events or exhibitions, things like that.
Clear. Yeah. A question for Koike. Can you tell us more about the Portuguese contemporary art exhibition, where she was hiding? We opened one, so.
Well, I enjoyed curating emerging artists from many countries. And one culture attaché in Tokyo from Portugal embassy came to me, and he wanted me to curate the emerging artist from Portugal. So one summer, I went there. I really enjoyed the city of Lisbon and midnight life in Portugal. And while I was visiting studios, I saw so many interesting points that they were discussing. And one curator said to me, there is another interesting artist, elder lady, but would you like to see her? And I immediately said yes. And there, I was very impressed that she was creating very free-minded work of art, from just a simple drawing to a kind of installation art. And I asked her to join. So that time I chose some of her work of those days. But I had a lucky chance from the university that I can invite one artist for this exhibition, supported by university where I was teaching. And I asked her to do a workshop with my students. And she came, and she was handling a real thin broadcloth. And I said, what is that? And this is my new work. And it was Cézanne. And it was so beautiful, but so casually done. And I learned a lot from her attitude. Thank you.
Thank you. Running out of questions, but I have another one for Sharon. Sharon, it's about a dream. What's the next textile destination for you? tell us,
It's a
share
whole
it with us.
list, actually.
A whole list.
After today, especially, I've got a bit more onto the list. There's India, there's Africa, there's so many different places. But I recently met some tribe leaders from the Maasai group in Kenya and Tanzania, and we're looking to do something together as well. But yeah, this dream kind of builds on and changes almost daily, so you have to update that.
Sounds good. Okay, I look to the room here. Another question.
Maybe a naive question. Sharon, how do you meet like a Maasai leader, or how do you, because some of the places that you talk about are quite inaccessible, and I was just wondering, how do you make that initial introduction, or how do you just go there and meet people and hang out, and yeah, because I think that's actually what happens a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, I think when I first started the whole research journey, I did just go around and call it a holiday. But you know, call
That's
it
safe.
a holiday, but deliberately go to places where there's a lot of crafts and start to talk to people and realize who is the local experts, who are the researchers there, who is the professor who has been publishing around this. In some countries, it's more like who is the boss. So there's a lot of different kind of social and political structure reflecting on all these relationships. In some other cases, there are people who found me on the internet, and we just started talking a few months afterwards, like, hey, I want to come and visit and actually run stories on you. So it was more like a journalistic approach when I first started this. And there are, for the Maasai group, currently I'm actually doing a study in London on museums, heritage and material culture. So deliberately looking at how cultures are being presented in museums around the world, and especially those have more complicated history and heritage. So I guess what you've been seeing is that I'm talking about a lot of remote cultures, but these cultures, a lot of it has its history as well as its future. They are also innovating, although I don't, have time to go into details. And the Maasai group is one of those who are very active in innovating themselves and wanting to do global partnerships. So they came out and actually have this collaboration with the Pitts River Museum in Oxford, and I happened to be in one of their meetings and kind of looking at how they revisit all their objects that's been distributed around the colonizers and how to reconcile with that kind of history nowadays.
Thank you.
I hope that answered.
I was Mitsuki. No, I was informed that there are also quite some students over here, so I was really curious if there are any questions by the new generation of students. Can the students raise their hands, maybe, or not? Is there any student here? No. Okay. Maybe next time. Mitsuki.
As a weaver or artisans in your house, right? And do you think is that because you have started working with the luxury brand, like you said, the Dior or the famous hotel or whatever? So that's also one of the strong reasons to attract the younger generation.
Yeah, I think so. They know our company on some magazine, TV. So the important thing is how to communicate to them, how to expand to our information, right information, and our possibility. That's also interesting point. So we started to of course, so we started to new develop for the oven machine. But another side, we started to think about the global strategy for the overseas. Now we work with the Danish design firm. They think for the strategy for the overseas. And sometimes they do the PR for the communication to the overseas. So that's also my very important point.
Thank you. More question, Janice.
I wanted to just step back a bit because am I right in understanding that after some not successful attempts, it was an exhibition of classical, inverted commas, Japanese textiles in a traditional environment in Paris that gave you one kind of, I mean, there's two kinds of platforms. This is one kind of platform. The other is digital platforms for people to directly sell without the middle person. So I think I'm trying to ask that a conventional route of inventing yourself and going into design weeks or whatever, it was almost the classical, our own archives, exhibition, show the quality and the history of, and then someone's come in to see the exhibition. Was I right to understand that? So it was through an exhibition in Paris that then somebody comes and thinks, okay. Because I thought that was really interesting, which is the value of exhibitions and critical heritage and showing heritage.
It's an interesting
That's why
question.
I was wanting to think if I've heard that properly.
So for me, it's for heritage side. Now with our company, 80% is now still make a kimono and obi. And we are wholesaler on that side. And our company mission is one is so keep maintain for preserve our kimono culture in Japan. And another side is for do the new challenge. So for me it's both is of course important. So I think our new challenge is expand to kimono market. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. Another question over there.
Thank you for great talks. I want to ask one question, Gabriela, for the Frisco. You mentioned also a little bit, it's when you went to the survey, so there's a lot of copied products. And then also it's, so because Frisco was, I know it's red carpet products, and then what you continue is to elevating up and to keep, but there's the differences, and then how do you really tackle this kind of, because you inspired to so many copies comes, and how are you embracing it, and how the company addressing the issue?
It's a very difficult question. We're having a lot of problem, we're in a bad economical situation because of all the copies. And at the beginning, I talked a bit about the DNA of our brand and how you see it in our product. And we had some people at Flisco thinking that, let's begin, China mainly has copied us, creating a perfect image of our product, and our product actually it's imperfect. Every centimeter is different, the indigo bleeds, there's misfit in the color blocking. We cannot have a perfect product. We cannot have a white cloth with indigo, because the indigo bleeds. So some people at Flisco wanted to copy China because the consumers start thinking, oh, I don't like Flisco because it's dirty, it's not white, it's not perfect. But actually, since we have the new CEO, we, instead of seeing wax as a problem, we see it as a quality. So we're actually a quite expensive product, but not expensive enough. So the strategy completely changed. So now we're aside from what I'm doing, there's somebody busy with how can we behave as a premium brand in Africa. And I think we cannot be copied in services yet. And as we're a half-finished product, we have still a long way to have a finished product, ready to wear, or a very, very exclusive tailor service. So we're working on that. And we also have a team of lawyers that are busy with copies. And that's it. Yeah, we are still recognized, though, by the final consumer as a premium brand. So people smell the fabric, touch the fabric, see it from the distance and know this is not a Flisco. So when they marry, when they have a baby, when they go to a funeral, they still look for the original looking. Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah. Yeah. Are there any more questions?
All of the speakers today, and I think that's in a way, since we're talking about heritage and about craft, I think one of the things that Gabriela just said, that sort of like assuming imperfections as the thing that differentiates your brand or your product from something else might just be the way that preserves craft, because as we move further and further into like technology that makes everything perfect and exactly the same and homogeneous, and I think the future of craft and the future of all these legacies is where you can see the sort of like human hand and the sort of like imperfection and the small difference between. So I think that might be like an interesting thing that we saw in all of the presentations today, that there is that possibility of the touch of the human hand being what ultimately saves all these textile
I think beauty is in the imperfection. That always has been like that. Today we heard really magnificent stories. We started with some questions about how to deal with textile legacy today and for tomorrow. I think we got some excellent, inspiring best practices by all the lectures you shared with us. I think that's really important, because sharing knowledge, sharing failures, sharing mistakes, and sharing successful stories is really important to make steps in the future. I think SHAT is a sort of community, a community where people come together, where they share this knowledge, where we show the things we do together. And I think it's really important, in a way, to make a better world, to make the world a little bit more beautiful. So I really hope that we continue forming a growing international network, and that we can use textiles as an important tool who everybody knows, because it's a universal thing. Textiles have been there for ages already, and probably it will also stay here for ages, especially when we are open to get into new technology. And we saw some interesting examples of that. So for me, the future is really hopeful, and textiles can contribute in a really good way. Thank you very much for everybody being here. Thank you very much for your splendid stories. Thank you.